She was only trying to refill his coffee when the billionaire CEO snapped, "Can't you do anything right, you stupid girl?" And in the stunned silence that followed, the $9.5 billion deal he'd flown across the world to sign simply evaporated. She was only trying to refill his coffee when the billionaire CEO snapped, "Can't you do anything right, you stupid girl?" And in the stunned silence that followed, the $9.5 billion deal he'd flown across the world to sign simply evaporated. The words still hung in the air like smoke when Aisha Kamara felt the glass pot tremble in her hand. Hot coffee sloshed over the rim, scalding her wrist, but she didn't flinch. 28 years of life had taught her that flinching only made men like him louder. The private dining room on the 47th floor of the Langham Tower had gone so quiet she could hear the soft tick of the Patek Philippe on the wrist of the Japanese chairman opposite her. Mr. Nakamura's eyes, usually warm, had turned to winter steel. Across the linen-clad table, Julian Voss leaned back in his chair as though he'd merely commented on the weather. 42 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, hair the color of wet sand pushed back from a forehead that had never known worry. People said he looked like a Viking who'd learned to wear Tom Ford. People were half right. Julian didn't even glance at Aisha again. His gaze was locked on Nakamura, calculating, already moving on to the next chess move. He had flown in from Singapore at 4 a.m., slept 3 hours, closed a hostile takeover in Zurich by video before breakfast. A spilled drop of coffee was nothing. A black waitress in a starched white shirt was less than nothing. Aisha set the pot down with deliberate care, the way her grandmother had taught her to set down grief, slowly so it didn't shatter everything else. "I apologize, sir," she said, voice low, steady, Harlem still curled around every vowel. "Let me bring a fresh cup." Julian gave a short, dismissive laugh. "Don't bother. Just try not to ruin the rest of the morning." Chairman Nakamura closed the crimson leather folder in front of him. The sound was soft, final like a coffin lid. He spoke in precise, almost accentless English. "Mr. Voss. In my country we believe that how a man treats those who serve him reveals the true size of his soul." He stood. The 3 executives with him rose in perfect unison. "We will not be proceeding with the acquisition. Thank you for your time." Julian's smirk froze. "Chairman, we're 90 minutes from signing." "Some things," Nakamura said, bowing slightly, "are worth more than 90 billion yen." The Japanese delegation left without another word. The double doors sighed shut behind them. Only then did Julian look at Aisha, really look for the first time. She was already walking away, spine straight, tray balanced against her hip. Her name tag glinted under the chandelier, A. Kamara. Julian felt the rage rise like bile. $9.5 billion. Gone. Because of her. He stood so fast his chair toppled backward. "You," he barked. "Come back here." Aisha kept walking. 3 floors below, in the staff corridor that smelled of bleach and burnt sugar, Aisha pressed her back to the cool wall and let the tremor take her. Her wrist was red, already blistering, but that wasn't why her breath hitched. Stupid girl. The words weren't new. She'd heard every version. But today they had cost someone almost $10 billion, and tomorrow the restaurant would cost her the only job that kept her little brother's epilepsy meds paid for. She closed her eyes and saw her mother's face the night the hospital turned them away for the 3rd time. "Keep your head up, baby. The world only gets to call you what you answer to." Aisha opened her eyes, wiped the single tear with the heel of her hand, and walked toward the service elevator. She had 6 more hours on shift. Rent was due in 9 days. She didn't have the luxury of falling apart. Meanwhile, in the private dining room, Julian Voss stood alone among the ruins of a breakfast he no longer wanted. His phone buzzed angrily, board members, investors, his CFO screaming in all caps texts. He ignored them all. He replayed the last 90 seconds in his head and felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years, the cold slap of consequence. He had built an empire on never apologizing, never looking down unless it was to step over someone. And now the empire had a crack running straight through it, put there by a waitress he'd dismissed in 4 words. He righted his chair, sat, and stared at the puddle of coffee cooling on the white tablecloth. It looked like a map of something lost. Somewhere in the building an elevator dinged. 2 lives that should never have touched were now bound by one cruel sentence and one quiet, unbreakable dignity. Neither of them knew it yet, but the day was only just beginning. Have you ever been called something that cut deeper than it should have? What did you do with the hurt? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Julian Voss did not leave the 47th floor the way most men leave a disaster, quietly, head down, desperate to disappear. He left like a storm front rolling in, coat unbuttoned, jaw set, eyes hunting for someone to pay. He found her in the service pantry, sleeves pushed up, running cold water over the angry red welt on her wrist. The fluorescent light made her skin look almost blue-black, the burn a violent slash of crimson. She didn't hear him at first. The faucet was loud and her heart beat louder. Julian filled the doorway, 6'3" of tailored fury. "Do you have any idea what you just cost me?" His voice was low, controlled, the kind of quiet that makes dogs stop barking. Aisha shut off the tap. Water dripped from her fingertips like slow tears. She turned, met his eyes and did not look away. "I know exactly what I cost you, Mr. Voss." Her voice was soft, but it carried every corner of the cramped pantry. $9.5 billion and whatever was left of your manners. The insult landed so cleanly that for half a second Julian forgot how to breathe. No one, no board member, no senator, no ex-wife, had spoken to him like that in 20 years. He took one step inside. The door swung shut behind him. "You think this is funny? That little diversity performance you just pulled." He gestured toward the dining room. "Nakamura's been courting me for 18 months. 18. And you?" "I was doing my job," she cut in. "You're the one who decided humiliating a waitress was part of the pitch." Julian's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "You don't get to lecture me. You pour coffee. That's it. That's your entire place in the world." Aisha felt the words try to burrow under her skin the way they always had, lazy, loud, angry, poor, stupid, but this time something older and harder pushed back. She dried her hands on a towel, slow, deliberate. "My place." She stepped forward until they were only 2 feet apart. "My place is keeping the lights on for a 12-year-old who has seizures if he misses one dose. My place is working double so my grandmother doesn't die in a nursing home that smells like piss. My place is smiling when men like you look through me like I'm furniture. Until today." Julian opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time he noticed the faint scar that ran through her left eyebrow, the way exhaustion had painted soft bruises beneath her eyes, the tiny gold stud in her ear that looked like it had cost less than his breakfast tip. Aisha's voice dropped to something raw. "You call me stupid. Fine. But stupid girls don't raise their brothers alone. Stupid girls don't graduate top of their class working 40 hours a week. Stupid girls don't keep breathing when the world decides they're invisible. So congratulations, Mr. Voss. You just lost $9.5 billion to the stupidest girl you'll ever meet." The silence that followed was so complete they could hear the hum of the refrigerator compressor. Julian felt something shift inside his chest, something small and rusted that hadn't moved since he was 17 and watching his father drink himself to death in a one-bedroom in South Boston. He hated the feeling. Hated her for causing it. He reached for anger the way other men reach for a cigarette. "You're fired," he said. Aisha gave a tired smile that somehow looked like victory. "You can't fire me. You don't sign my checks. The Langham does. And they like 5-star reviews more than they like billionaires who throw tantrums." She moved a step past him. He blocked the door without thinking, arm braced against the frame. Their bodies were suddenly shockingly close. He smelled vanilla and faint burnt coffee on her skin. She smelled cedar and money on his. "Name your price," he said, voice rough. "Whatever it takes to make this go away." Aisha looked up at him, really looked, and saw something flicker behind the Arctic blue. Panic, maybe even shame. It made him human for one heartbeat. "I don't want your money," she said quietly. "I want you to remember my name." She ducked under his arm and walked out, shoulders squared, heels clicking like punctuation marks. Julian stayed in the pantry long after she was gone. He pressed his forehead to the cool metal door and whispered the name he'd read on her tag, tasting it like a foreign language. "Aisha." Down in the lobby, Aisha stepped into the employee restroom, locked the door, and finally let herself cry, silent, furious tears that tasted like metal. She stared at her reflection and saw every year she'd survived written in the lines around her eyes. Her phone buzzed. A text from her little brother Malik. "Did you eat today, sis? I saved you some of the good cereal." She typed back with shaking thumbs. "On my way home soon, baby. Save me the marshmallows." She splashed water on her face, straightened her name tag and walked back into the shift. Neither of them noticed the security camera in the corner of the pantry that had captured every second, every word, every tremor, every almost touch. By noon, the clip would be on X with the caption, "Billionaire CEO calls black waitress stupid? Watch what she does next." By 3 p.m. it would have 40 million views. By nightfall, both their lives would be unrecognizable. But right now, in the fragile hush after the bomb, all that existed was the echo of her name on his tongue and the burn on her wrist that spelled out, in raised red letters, the exact cost of pride. When was the last time someone's cruelty forced you to decide who you really are? Tell me in the comments, your story matters. The clip hit the internet like a match dropped on dry grass. By 2:17 p.m., #StupidGirl was trending worldwide. By 2:43 p.m., Julian Voss's name was toxic. By 3:05 p.m., 3 major sponsors had already pulled out of the upcoming Vostech keynote. Julian stood in the glass-walled war room of his Manhattan penthouse office, watching the numbers hemorrhage on the Bloomberg terminal. Red arrows everywhere. His PR crisis team, 6 people paid more per hour than most Americans made in a week, screamed into headsets. The phrase "racist meltdown" was being typed in real time by millions of fingers. He muted every screen with one vicious swipe and stared out at Central Park, 38 floors below. He told himself he was furious at the leak, at the editing, at cancel culture, at everything except the one thing that actually mattered: the truth. His assistant, Priya, knocked once and entered without waiting. "Sir, the Langham just called. They've suspended Ms. Kamara pending investigation. They're terrified of being seen as protecting her." Julian turned slowly. "Suspended? They claim it's protocol when staff are involved in viral incidents." Priya's voice was careful. "They also banned you from all their properties worldwide. Effective immediately." He laughed, short, ugly. "Of course they did." Priya hesitated. "There's something else. She's outside." Julian's pulse stuttered. "Who?" "Aisha Kamara. She's in reception. She won't leave until she speaks to you. Security is nervous." For a moment he pictured her downstairs in that white shirt, chin high, daring the world to move her. He hated how vividly he could see it. "Tell her I'm in meetings until next year." Priya didn't move. "Sir, the stock is down 11%. Analysts are saying if you don't address this personally today, we're looking at a $30 billion wipeout by close." He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Fine. Put out the standard apology. Regret if anyone was offended, taken out of context, blah blah blah." "That won't work this time," Priya said quietly. "People want blood. Or humility. Preferably both." Julian looked at her for a long second, then past her, through the glass, to the city that had always bent to his will. Today it felt like the city was laughing. "Get her up here," he said finally. 5 minutes. Then she disappears forever. Downstairs, Aisha sat on the marble bench in the cavernous lobby of Vostech Tower, hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for a bus instead of sitting in the eye of a hurricane. Her phone had died an hour ago from notifications. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years were texting heart emojis and fist emojis and crying emojis. Strangers were sending her Cash App requests with notes that said, "Take his money, queen." Her manager had called twice, voice trembling, asking her to come in for a conversation. She had exactly $43.67 in her checking account and rent due in 8 days. Malik's meds cost $312 with the discount card. She was 28 years old and bone-tired, and still she sat with her spine straight because her grandmother's voice lived in her bones. "Never let them see you fold, baby." Security hovered, unsure whether to treat her like a threat or a celebrity. When the private elevator opened and Priya stepped out, Aisha stood. "Ms. Kamara," Priya said, "Mr. Voss will see you now." Aisha followed her into the mirrored elevator. Their reflections stared back. One in a $4,000 suit, one in a $19.99 white shirt with a faint coffee stain near the hem. Neither woman spoke. The doors slid open onto the 38th floor. Julian was waiting, arms crossed, framed by the skyline like a king who just realized the throne was on fire. Aisha stepped out. The doors closed behind her with a whisper. Julian didn't offer a seat. He didn't offer anything. "You wanted to gloat in person?" he asked, voice iced over. "Congratulations. You're famous. My company's on its knees. Happy?" Aisha looked around the vast office, all steel and glass and ego, then back at him. "I'm not here to gloat," she said. "I'm here because I still have to pick my little brother up from school in 2 hours, and I no longer have a job to go back to tomorrow. Your mess just became my mess. So no, Mr. Voss. I'm not happy." Something in her tone, exhausted, matter-of-fact, sliced straight through his defenses. He opened his mouth to snap back and found nothing there. Aisha continued, softer. "I didn't leak the video. I don't even know how to work TikTok. But it's out there now and people are saying things about me that aren't true and about you that, well, some of them are true." Julian flinched. Actually flinched. She took one step closer. "I came to ask you, man to woman, what you're going to do about it. Because right now the whole world thinks you hate people who look like me. And the whole world thinks I'm some kind of hero. I'm not. I'm just trying to survive the week. The silence stretched, thin and dangerous. Julian's voice when it came was rough. I don't owe you an explanation. No, Aisha said. You owe me an apology. But I'm not holding my breath. She turned to leave. He spoke to her back. If I apologize publicly, they'll say I caved. The stock will tank harder. Thousands of employees. Aisha stopped, turned. And if you don't, they'll say you're exactly who you showed yourself to be this morning. Either way, Mr. Voss, you don't get to walk away clean. That's not how this works anymore. She pressed the elevator button. The doors opened immediately as if the building itself couldn't wait to be rid of her. Just before she stepped in, she looked at him one last time. I hope whatever's eating you alive is worth more than $9 billion, she said quietly. Because it's costing you everything else. The doors closed. Julian stood alone in the sudden silence and felt the walls he'd spent 20 years building start to crack, one hairline fracture at a time. Down in the lobby, Aisha walked out into the cold November sunshine and realized she was shaking, not from fear, but from the terrifying certainty that she had just looked the devil in the eye and refused to blink. Neither of them was ready for what came next. When the world forces you to choose between pride and doing the right thing, which voice wins inside you? Tell me below, I'm listening. The storm hit Manhattan at 6:12 p.m. Not a polite November drizzle, a full Atlantic nor'easter that swallowed the city in gray water and screaming wind. Subways flooded. Taxis vanished. Power flickered across whole grid sections. Aisha never made it to Malik's school. She was on the F train when the lights died and the car lurched to a halt inside the tunnel. 30 minutes turned into 2 hours. Phones died. Children cried. A man had a panic attack. When the MTA finally evacuated them up an emergency stairwell slick with rain, it was past 9. The streets were rivers. No Uber, no bus, no dollar van would take her to Harlem in this. She stood under the dripping awning of a closed bodega on 34th Street, soaked to the bone, mascara tracking down her cheeks like war paint, and realized she had exactly one option left. She opened the banking app Julian Voss had apparently forced his assistant to create for her that afternoon, an unsolicited $250,000 hardship settlement that had appeared while she was underground. The note attached was 2 words, I'm sorry. She stared at it until the screen went black, then looked up at the only building still blazing with light in the entire storm-lashed canyon of Midtown. Vostok Tower. She walked the 6 blocks through horizontal rain, shoes ruined, teeth chattering, pride somewhere back in the subway tunnel with her common sense. The night security guard recognized her instantly, of course he did. Her face was on every screen in America. He didn't ask questions. Just handed her a towel and buzzed her up. The private elevator opened directly into Julian's penthouse residence above the office, 72nd floor, the one nobody ever saw. Julian was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window, city lights strobing across his face every time lightning cracked. He wore gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt, barefoot, hair damp like he'd been running hands through it for hours. A half-empty bottle of Yamazaki 18 sat on the marble island beside an untouched glass. He turned when the elevator chimed. For a moment they just stared, 2 drowned animalsily people who had spent the day trying to destroy each other. You shouldn't be here, he said, but there was no venom in it. Tell me about it, Aisha answered, voice hoarse. Water pooled around her ruined shoes. Everything is underwater. I have a little brother waiting at a neighbor's with no heat and no idea where I am. My phone's dead. I'm frozen. And apparently the only person in New York with power and a roof that isn't leaking is you. Julian exhaled through his nose, looked at the bottle, then at her. He grabbed a thick towel from a stack, crossed the room, and draped it over her shoulders himself. His fingers brushed the wet skin at her neck and both of them froze for half a second. Bathrooms down the hall, he said roughly. Dry clothes in the guest room. I'll find something that fits. She wanted to argue, wanted to keep the armor of anger, but her body betrayed her with a violent shiver. 20 minutes later Aisha emerged in one of his white dress shirts and a pair of his sweatpants cinched tight at the waist with a Vostok lanyard. The shirt hung to mid-thigh, the sleeves swallowed her hands. She looked about 16 and furious about it. Julian had built a fire, an actual fire in a city apartment, and set a mug of something steaming on the coffee table. She smelled cinnamon and whiskey. Drink, he ordered. I don't take orders from you. It's tea with a little whiskey. You're hypothermic. Drink or I call an ambulance and tomorrow the headlines say I poisoned you. She drank. It burned beautifully. They sat on opposite ends of an L-shaped couch that probably cost more than her yearly salary, fire crackling between them like a referee. The silence stretched until it was unbearable. Julian spoke first, voice low. "Your brother, he's okay? Mrs. Rodriguez has him. She's 73 and keeps a .38 in her housecoat. He's safer than both of us right now." A small huff, almost a laugh, escaped him. Another silence. Aisha studied the room. The original Basquiat over the fireplace, the grand piano no one probably played, the loneliness you could feel even with 30-foot ceilings. "Why do you live like this?" she asked suddenly. "Like what?" "Like a museum that lost its tourists." Julian looked at her for a long moment. "Because it's easier than letting anyone close enough to leave." The honesty startled them both. Outside, thunder rolled like artillery. Aisha pulled her knees to her chest, sleeves over her hands. "I still hate you, you know." "I know," he said. "I hate me too right now." She glanced at him sharply. "Don't do that. Don't try to make this shared. You humiliated me on camera. You cost me my job. You don't get to sit here looking tortured and expect sympathy." "I don't expect anything," he said quietly. "I'm just stuck in this apartment with the one person on earth who has every right to want me ruined. And the storm won't let either of us leave." Aisha laughed, bitter and exhausted. "God has a sense of humor." Another flash of lightning lit the room white. The power flickered once, twice, then steadied. Julian got up, went to the window, pressed his palm to the glass. "I've been trying to write the apology," he said, not turning around. 6 drafts. They all sound like press releases. Because I don't know how to say I'm sorry without sounding like I'm managing damage. Aisha watched the reflection of the fire in the window, dancing over his shoulders. "Start with my name," she said softly. "People like you never remember our names." He turned then. Really looked at her. "Aisha," he said, deliberate, careful, like he was tasting something rare. "I'm sorry, Aisha." The fire popped. Somewhere far below, a transformer exploded in blue light. For the first time all day, neither of them looked away. When were you and someone you couldn't stand suddenly trapped together with nowhere to hide? What happened when the masks came off? Share it below. You never know who needs to hear it tonight. The fire had settled into a low, steady glow when Julian came back from the kitchen carrying 2 bowls of something that smelled like childhood and forgiveness. He set one in front of Aisha, creamy grits swirled with sharp cheddar and tiny pieces of bacon. Comfort food from a man who looked like he'd never needed comfort in his life. "My housekeeper's night off," he said, almost shy. "This is the only thing I know how to cook without burning the place down." Aisha stared at the bowl, then at him. "You made grits?" "My college roommate was from Savannah. He taught me when we were pulling all-nighters sophomore year." He sat again, closer this time, only one cushion between them. "Eat before it gets cold." She did. The first bite was so good her eyes watered, or maybe that was something else. Julian watched her like she was a puzzle he was afraid to touch. After a minute he spoke, voice barely louder than the rain. "I wasn't born with this," he said, gesturing at the penthouse. "I was born in a double-wide outside South Boston that smelled like mildew and Old Spice. My father worked the docks until the bottle took him. My mother cleaned offices at night so I could go to school in clothes that didn't have holes." Aisha set her spoon down slowly. Julian kept going, eyes on the fire. "I was the poor kid on scholarship at St. Anselm's Prep. Rich boys used to pay me $20 to do their calculus homework. One of them, Tad Willoughby III, used to call me trailer trash every single day for 4 years. I smiled, took the money, and swore one day I'd own their fathers." He laughed, a sound with no joy in it. "I did. Bought their companies, fired them, watched them beg. And somewhere along the way I turned into the thing I hated most. The guy who looks at people like they're disposable." Aisha's voice was quiet. "So this morning, I was just the easiest target." Julian finally looked at her. "You were the mirror I've been running from for 25 years. Silence wrapped around them, thick and trembling. Aisha pulled the sleeves of his shirt over her hands again. "My turn, I guess." She stared into the flames. "My mom died when I was 19. Overdose. She was a nurse, worked doubles, still couldn't keep the pills away. Malik was 4. Had his first grand mal seizure the night of her funeral. I carried him 6 blocks to the ER because the ambulance wouldn't come to our building fast enough." Julian's jaw tightened. "Foster system tried to split us up," she continued. "I aged out, got emancipated, fought for custody. Worked 3 jobs to keep him. Grandma helped until the stroke took her voice. Now it's just me and him against everything." She swallowed hard. I learned real early that the world calls you stupid when you're poor and black and female and still dare to take up space. So I stopped answering to it. Until today. Julian's voice cracked. Aisha. Don't, she warned, but there was no heat left. Don't say you understand. You don't. You built armor out of money. I built mine out of having no choice. He nodded, accepting the boundary. Then he did something she never expected. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small, worn leather wallet, the kind poor boys carry long after they can afford better, and opened it. Inside was a photograph, edges soft from years of handling. A little blonde boy, maybe 8 years old, gap-toothed, standing next to a tired woman with kind eyes and a faded Red Sox cap. My sister Lily, he said, voice raw. She was 12 when Dad wrapped his truck around a tree drunk. I was 15. They put her in a group home upstate. I promised I'd get her out the second I made real money. He traced the photo with his thumb. By the time I could, she'd been dead 6 months. Overdose. Same as your mom. Aisha felt the air leave her lungs. I never told anyone that, he whispered. Not my ex-wife, not my therapist, not the board. You're the first person who's ever seen this picture in 27 years. He held it out. She took it with careful fingers like it might disintegrate. The little boy in the picture had Julian's eyes, same haunted blue, same stubborn set to the mouth. Aisha's voice was barely sound. You carry her with you. Every day, he said. Every deal, every zero on the balance sheet. I told myself I was building something that would make her proud. But really I was just running. She handed the photo back. Their fingers brushed and neither pulled away. Outside, the storm began to ease, rain softening to a whisper against the glass. Aisha looked at him, really looked, and saw the exhausted child still hiding behind the billionaire mask. I don't forgive you yet, she said quietly. I know. But I see you now. Julian closed his eyes like the words were pain and relief at once. They sat there until the fire burned low, two people who had spent their lives surviving in opposite ways, suddenly sharing the same small circle of light. And for the first time in years, neither of them felt alone. Who's the one person you've never told your deepest wound? What would happen if you finally let them see it? Leave it in the comments if you can. I promise you're not the only one carrying it. The fire was down to embers when Julian stood up, walked to the grand piano no one played, and lifted the fallboard. He sat, flexed his fingers once, and began. Not some flashy Liszt showpiece. A simple, aching melody Aisha recognized immediately, someone to watch over me. Slow, tender, the way her grandmother used to hum it while braiding her hair on Sunday nights. His hands moved with the kind of muscle memory that lives deeper than thought. The sound filled the penthouse like warm water rising around them. Aisha closed her eyes and let the notes carry her back to a tiny kitchen in Harlem, linoleum peeling, radio crackling, a woman's voice promising everything would be all right. When the last chord faded, the silence felt sacred. Julian spoke without turning. Lily taught me that one. Said every sad person needs at least one song that feels like a hug. Aisha opened her eyes. Play it again. He did. This time she stood, walked over, and sat beside him on the bench. Close enough that their shoulders touched. Halfway through she started singing, soft, a little husky, the alto her mother had given her. Julian's fingers faltered for one heartbeat, then adjusted, following her like he'd been waiting his whole life to accompany someone. When it ended, neither moved. Aisha looked at their reflection in the polished black lid. Two people who had no business fitting together, yet somehow did in this moment. She laughed, small and wondering. I can't believe I'm getting a private concert from the guy who called me stupid 12 hours ago. Julian's mouth curved, not quite a smile but close. I can't believe the girl who destroyed my empire with 4 sentences knows all the words to a Gershwin song. She bumped his shoulder. Don't flatter yourself. My grandma was old school. They stayed at the piano. He played Billie Holiday, Nina Simone, then, hesitant, asked if she knew any Lauryn Hill. She did. They traded verses of X Factor, like teenagers, voices overlapping, laughing when they forgot lyrics and made them up. At some point he got up, came back with 2 mismatched mugs of hot chocolate spiked with peppermint schnapps. They drank leaning against the piano, legs stretched out on the cool hardwood. Aisha traced the rim of her mug. Malik is gonna lose his mind when I tell him I sang with a billionaire. Julian's face softened. Tell him he can have the piano if he wants. I never play for anyone. She looked at him sharply. You'd give a 12-year-old $100,000 Steinway? I'd give him the whole apartment if it made you smile like that again. The words hung there heavier than they should have been. Aisha felt heat rise in her cheeks. She hid it by setting her mug down and wandering to the bookshelf. Her fingers trailed over first editions, a framed photo of Julian shaking hands with presidents, then stopped on something small and out of place, a child's drawing in a cheap drugstore frame. Stick figures under a yellow sun. One tall, one short, holding hands. Crayon words at the bottom, "For my big brother who will save me." She picked it up carefully. Julian's voice came from right behind her. Lily drew that the week before they took her away. I keep it to remember why I started. And why I can't stop. Aisha turned. He was closer than she expected, eyes red-rimmed but steady. I used to think success would fill the hole, he said. Turns out it just made the hole bigger and lined it with marble. Aisha set the drawing back exactly where it belonged. Then, without thinking, she reached up and touched the hollow beneath his cheekbone, light like she was testing if he was real. Julian caught her wrist gently, held it there. His thumb brushed the burn on her skin from that morning's coffee, now an angry blister. I did this, he whispered. It's just a burn. It's not. Their breathing synced, slow and careful. Aisha spoke first. I don't know what we're doing, Julian. Me neither. But I know I don't want it to stop. She rose on her toes, he was ridiculously tall, and pressed her forehead to his. Just that. Nothing more. They stood there breathing the same air while the city slept under inches of rain. Eventually he led her to the couch, pulled a cashmere throw over them both. She curled into the corner. He sat close enough that their knees touched. Tell me something true, she said, voice sleepy. Something you've never told anyone. He thought for a long time. When I was 8, he said finally, I stole a chocolate bar from the corner store because Lily wanted one and we had no money. Got caught. The owner made me stand outside holding a sign that said I'm a thief for 3 hours. People I knew walked by and laughed. I swore that day I would never be small again. Aisha reached over, laced her fingers through his. You kept the promise. Just forgot the cost. He turned her hand palm up, traced the callus at the base of her fingers. Your turn. She smiled into the dark. I still sleep with the stuffed giraffe Malik won at Coney Island when he was 6. He thinks I gave it to charity years ago. If he knew his big sister was 28 and cuddling Mr. Spots every night, he'd never let me live it down. Julian laughed, real, startled, the sound of something inside him cracking open in the best way. They talked until the sky outside turned pearl gray. About favorite cereals and worst heartbreaks. About the way fear feels in your body when the rent's late. About how success can be the loneliest place on earth. At 5:47 a.m. the power came back fully, the city hummed awake. Aisha's head rested on his shoulder. His arm had gone numb hours ago and he would happily lose it before moving. She murmured, half asleep, I still don't forgive you completely. I know, he whispered into her braids. But stay anyway. She did. For the first time in years, neither of them woke up alone. When was the night you talked to someone until sunrise and everything changed? Tell me about it in the comments. Those stories are magic. The morning came in pale and merciless. Aisha woke first, disoriented by the weight of Julian's arm across her waist, the scent of cedar and sleep on foreign sheets. For 3 full seconds the world felt soft. Then her phone, now charged on the nightstand, lit up with 187 missed calls and a single push alert that turned her blood to ice. Vostexio caught an overnight scandal with stupid girl Waitress. Exclusive photos inside the penthouse. Sources say she spent the night. She sat up so fast Julian stirred. Aisha. She was already scrolling. Grainy long lens shots through the window, her asleep on his chest, his hand in her braids. Another of them at the piano, her face lit with laughter. The worst one. Julian kissing her forehead at 5:12 a.m., tender and unmistakable. The headline on the Post site screamed. From insult to bedroom in 24 hours. Billionaire buys his forgiveness. Comments poured in like sewage. Gold-digging hypocrite. Knew she was playing the long game. He paid for it, she delivered. Poor little victim act lasted what, 6 hours? Aisha's hand went to her mouth. She felt the room tilt. Julian reached for the phone. She jerked it away. Don't, she whispered. Just, don't. He saw the screen anyway. His face went gray. Aisha, I swear I didn't. Your security let them up to the roof of the building across the street, she said, voice climbing. Your people. Your world. And now the entire internet thinks I'm a whore who traded sex for a settlement. She was on her feet, searching for her ruined clothes from yesterday, tears burning but refusing to fall. Julian stood too, hands out like she was a spooked animal. I'll fix this. I'll sue them, I'll buy the... Stop. She spun on him. You can't buy this away. You can't press release this. Malik is going to see these pictures at school today. My grandmother's church group is going to see them. My old manager already texted me, guess you got your raise after all. Her voice cracked on the last word. Julian took a step toward her. She backed up until the wall met her spine. I trusted you, she said, and the words came out broken. Last night I let you see every cracked piece of me, and the second the sun came up your world turned it into trash. Aisha, please? No, she held up a shaking hand. You wanted to know what real shame feels like? This is it. Not the boardroom, not the stock price. This. Having your little brother ask if the rumors are true. She found her damp jeans, yanked them on over the sweatpants. The white shirt was torn at the seam now, she didn't care. Julian's voice dropped to something raw and desperate. I'm in love with you. The sentence detonated between them. Aisha froze, shirt half-buttoned, eyes wide and glassy. Don't, she said. Don't you dare weaponize that right now. It's not a weapon. It's the only true thing I've said in years. He took one careful step. I know I destroyed your life twice in 24 hours. I know I don't deserve a third chance. But I am in love with you, Aisha Kamara, and I will burn every dollar I have to make this right. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You still think everything has a price. She grabbed her dead phone, her soaked shoes, and walked to the elevator. Julian blocked the doors with his body. At least let me get you home safely. The paparazzi are camped downstairs. I've been getting myself home since I was 16, she said. I'll manage. He didn't move. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the man from last night cracking wide open, terrified and trying not to show it. Move, she whispered. He stepped aside. The doors closed on his devastated face. Down in the lobby the cameras descended like wolves. Questions ricocheted off marble. Aisha, did he pay you to sleep with him? Are you still claiming racism? Smile for the cover, sweetheart. She pushed through them, head high, tears finally falling but never slowing her stride. By the time she reached the subway, the video of her running the gauntlet was already online. Julian watched it live from the penthouse window, fists clenched so hard his nails drew blood. His phone rang, Priya, the board, his ex-wife, the crisis team. He let them all go to voicemail. He opened Twitter and started typing with shaking thumbs. I have spent my life believing weakness was the worst thing a man could show. Today I learned cruelty is worse. What the tabloids are saying about Aisha Kamara is a lie. What I said to her yesterday was the truth, and I will carry that shame forever. He stared at the cursor. Then he added one more line. I am stepping down as CEO of Vostek effective immediately. He hit post before he could second-guess it. Within minutes the stock opened down 38%. He didn't care. He walked to the piano, sat down, and played the opening bars of Someone to Watch Over Me, with tears falling onto the keys. Across the city, Aisha sat on the Uptown 2 train, soaked and shaking, scrolling through the new wave of hate. Then Julian's tweet appeared. She read it once, twice. The train lurched into 96th Street. She closed her eyes and let the tears come harder. The fragile thing that had grown between them overnight now lay in pieces on the floor of the world's biggest stage. And neither of them knew if anything could ever put it back together. When someone you started to love hurt you worse than you thought possible, did you ever find your way back? Or did you have to let it burn? Tell me in the comments. I'm holding space for every answer. 3 days of silence. 3 days in which the world did not stop screaming. Julian did not leave the penthouse. Food arrived untouched. Calls went unanswered. The board begged, threatened, finally accepted his resignation with a cold 2-line press release. Vostek stock hovered in freefall. Reporters camped on the sidewalk 72 floors below like crows waiting for a corpse. He sat at the piano for hours, playing the same 8 bars of their song until his fingers bled, then playing some more. On the third night he opened the child's drawing Lily had made decades ago, laid it on the music stand, and stared at the crayon sun until it blurred. He whispered to the empty room, I became the man who hurts people to prove he's not small anymore. I hurt her worst of all. Then he picked up his phone for the first time since the tweet that ended his empire. He dialed a number he'd memorized from Aisha's emergency contact form the hotel had quietly sent over. Mrs. Rodriguez answered on the second ring, wary. Who is this? Julian Voss, ma'am. I was wondering if Aisha is there. Or if Malik is. I just need to know they're safe. A long pause. Then a younger voice, Malik, in the background. Miss Rosie, tell him my sister doesn't want to talk to rich jerks who make her cry. Julian closed his eyes. The honesty of children was a blade. Mrs. Rodriguez came back softer. She's not here, Mijo. She took extra shifts at the new job, nights at the children's hospital cafeteria. Says she needs the money and the quiet. She don't sleep much anymore. Julian's voice cracked. Will you give her something for me? Another pause. Depends what it is. Tell her the piano is hers. And the apartment. And anything else she'll take. Tell her I'm leaving the city tonight. She never has to see me again. I just want her and Malik to have a home where the heat always works and no one ever calls them stupid again. He hung up before the old woman could answer because he didn't deserve kindness. Then he packed one duffel bag, jeans, t-shirts, Lily's drawing, the worn photo from his wallet, and called his pilot. Across the river, in the harsh fluorescent break room of New York Presbyterian, Aisha sat in scrubs 2 sizes too big, staring at a cup of coffee gone cold. Her new co-workers gave her space. Everyone had seen the headlines. She hadn't listened to the voice note Mrs. Rodriguez left. She couldn't bear to hear his name. But Malik had crawled into her bed the night before, small arms around her neck, whispering, "He gave us a whole house, Aish. A whole house with a yard and everything. Why are you still sad?" She hadn't had an answer. At 2:14 a.m. her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a video file. She almost deleted it. Instead she pressed play. Julian on the same piano bench, unshaven, eyes red, Lily's crayon drawing propped beside him. He didn't look at the camera at first. "I used to think love was something you earned by never needing anyone," he said, voice hoarse. "I was wrong. Love is what's left when you finally let someone see how broken you are, and they stay anyway." His fingers settled on the keys. He played their song all the way through, no mistakes, eyes closed. When the last note died, he opened his eyes and looked straight into the lens. "Aisha Kamara, I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve you. But I need you to know that every good thing I have left in the world is yours if you want it. The penthouse is in your name and Malik's. The piano too. I'm getting on a plane tonight and I won't come back unless you ask me to. Not because I'm running. Because you deserve to choose your life without me standing in it." He swallowed hard. "I love you. Not the idea of you. Not the redemption of you. The woman who carried her brother through seizures and still had fight left for a stranger who hurt her. The woman who sang Gershwin in borrowed clothes at 4 a.m. like joy was a choice she refused to give up." His voice broke completely. "I'm so sorry, Aisha. Be happy. Please be happy." The video ended. Aisha sat frozen, tears sliding off her chin onto the scrubs. The hospital corridor clock ticked loud in the silence. She opened the banking app, the one with the $250,000 settlement she'd never touched, and saw a new transfer. $412 million. Memo line, "For Malik's future, for every dream you were too busy surviving to have. Spend it, burn it, give it away. It's yours." She stared until the numbers blurred. Then she stood up, still clutching the phone, and walked out into the freezing December night without a coat. She took a cab, her first ever non-shared ride, straight to Midtown. The doorman at Vostek Tower recognized her instantly, eyes wide. "Miss Kamara." "Mr. Voss left for Teterboro 20 minutes ago. Private hangar." She was already running back to the cab. The driver broke every speed limit between Manhattan and New Jersey while Aisha sat forward on the seat, breath fogging the window, heart hammering so hard it hurt. She arrived as the Gulfstream's engines were spooling up, stair lights glowing against the dark tarmac. Julian stood at the foot of the steps in a simple black coat, duffel bag over his shoulder, face unreadable. He saw her and stopped breathing. Aisha stepped out of the cab, hair wild from the ride, wearing hospital scrubs and someone else's sneakers, tears frozen on her cheeks. 50 feet of cold concrete separated them. She took one step, then another. Julian dropped the bag. They met in the middle. She reached him first, grabbed the front of his coat with both fists, and shook him like she was trying to shake the last 3 days out of him. "You do not get to leave," she cried, voice ragged. "You do not get to give me everything and disappear like some tragic hero. That's not how this works." Julian's arms came around her so tightly her feet left the ground. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair, over and over like a prayer. I'm sorry. I hate what you did," she sobbed against his chest. "But I love who you are when you're not hiding." He pulled back just enough to see her face. "I have nothing left," he said. "The company, the money." "I don't want your money," she cut in fiercely. "I want the man who played piano for me at 4 a.m. I want the man who carried his sister's picture for 27 years. I want the man who finally learned how to say sorry with his whole heart." She kissed him, angry, desperate, hopeful. He kissed her back like a drowning man finally reaching air. When they broke apart, foreheads pressed together, she whispered, "Come home, Julian." He nodded, unable to speak. The pilot, watching from the cockpit window, smiled and shut the engines down. When everything fell apart, what made you choose to reach anyway? Tell me your moment in the comments. I need to know we all still try. 6 months later, late spring, the kind of May morning that makes New York forgive itself. The penthouse no longer looked like a museum. The Basquiat still hung over the fireplace, but now it shared wall space with Malik's chaotic finger paint masterpieces and a framed photograph of Aisha's grandmother laughing on Easter Sunday, 1998. The grand piano stood open permanently, lid covered in sheet music, gummy bears, and one persistent stuffed giraffe named Mr. Spots who had claimed the far corner as his throne. Julian Voss, once the most feared name on Wall Street, now answered to far better titles. Julian who makes pancakes, Julian who drives Malik to chess club, Julian who still can't sing but tries anyway. He was in the kitchen at 7:12 a.m., barefoot in sweatpants, flipping blueberry pancakes into the shape of dinosaurs because Malik insisted T-Rex was superior breakfast technology. Aisha leaned in the doorway watching him, arms folded, wearing one of his old MIT t-shirts and the softest smile the city had ever seen. "You're getting badder on the Forbes list you're using as a placemat," she teased. "That rag called me the disgraced billionaire last month," he said without looking up. "It can handle a little batter." She crossed the room, slipped her arms around his waist from behind, and rested her cheek between his shoulder blades. "You're happy," she murmured against his spine. "I can feel it in your heartbeat." He turned in her arms, flower on his cheek, eyes bluer than any May sky. "I wake up every morning waiting for the punchline," he said quietly. "For the moment you realize you picked the wrong guy and walk out. It still hasn't come." Aisha reached up and wiped the flour away with her thumb. "Good," she said. "Because I'm not going anywhere." Malik barreled in then, all elbows and 12-year-old energy, wearing a Vostek hoodie Julian had made specially for him, the old logo replaced with a cartoon giraffe holding a lightsaber. "Julian, the dinosaurs are burning." "Language, young Padawan," Julian said solemnly, flipping the pancakes with unnecessary flair. "We call it Cretaceous caramelization." Malik rolled his eyes so hard it was audible, but he was grinning. Later, after Malik left for school and the dishes were abandoned in the sink, Julian found Aisha on the terrace watering the herb garden they'd planted in whiskey barrels. He came up behind her, arms around her waist, chin on her shoulder. "I have something for you," he said. He placed a small velvet box in her palm. Aisha's breath caught. Inside was not a diamond the size of a meteor, he knew better now. It was a simple rose gold ring with a tiny bezel-set ruby and 2 small diamonds on either side. "My mother's," he said, voice rough. "The only thing of value she owned. She always said give it to the woman who makes you want to be a better man every single day." Aisha turned in his arms, eyes shining. "Julian? There's an inscription," he said. She tilted the ring to the sunlight. Inside the band in tiny script, "Love at last AK and JV." She laughed through sudden tears. "You had our initials put in your mother's ring? I figured she'd approve of the woman who taught her son how to apologize, how to forgive, and how to make dinosaur pancakes without setting off the smoke alarm." Aisha slid the ring onto her finger, perfect fit, like it had been waiting decades for her hand. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes. Yes, I will marry you. Yes, I will keep choosing you every morning. Yes, 1,000 times." He kissed her then, slow, reverent, like the first honest prayer of his life. That afternoon they went public the only way that felt right anymore. Aisha posted a single photo on her rarely used Instagram. Her hand wearing the ruby ring, resting on Julian's chest. Malik photobombing in the background making bunny ears behind Julian's head. Caption: "He called me stupid once. Then he learned my name. Then he learned my heart. Now he gets to keep it forever. Love at last." Hashtag unexpected but certain. The internet, which had torn them apart, now collectively lost its mind in the opposite direction. Comments poured in by the millions. "This is the redemption arc we all needed. From viral villain to this. I'm not crying, you're crying. Malik with the bunny ears is the real MVP." The stock of the new company Julian had quietly started, Kamara Voss Foundation, focused on epilepsy research and scholarships for kids who aged out of foster care, tripled in a week. But none of that mattered as much as the quiet evenings. One night in July, the 3 of them sat on the terrace eating watermelon and watching fireworks over the Hudson. Malik leaned against Julian's side, sleepy and sticky. "Hey Julian," he mumbled. "Yeah buddy? You're not leaving, right? Like, ever?" Julian looked at Aisha across the blanket, her bare feet tucked under his thigh, ruby ring catching the colored lights. He kissed the top of Malik's head. Never, kid. You're stuck with me. Malik grinned, satisfied, and promptly fell asleep with watermelon juice on his cheek. Aisha crawled over, laid her head on Julian's shoulder. Remember the storm? She whispered. Every second. I hated you so much that morning. I know. And now I can't remember what life felt like before you burned pancakes and played Gershwin off-key and loved us so loud the whole world heard it. Julian turned, pressed his lips to her temple. I was bankrupt the day I met you, he said softly. You made me the richest man alive. She smiled against his neck. Took you long enough. Later, after they carried Malik to bed and left the window open so he could hear the city breathing, they stood at the piano together. Julian sat, pulled her onto his lap and began their song, slow, perfect, no mistakes this time. Halfway through, Aisha joined in, voice low and steady. They finished together, the last note hanging in the air like a promise kept. Outside, New York kept moving, loud, messy, unforgiving. Inside, three people who had once been told, in different ways, that they were stupid, poor, broken, unworthy, had built a home where love was the only currency that mattered. And somewhere, if you listened very carefully on quiet nights, you could still hear a piano playing an old Gershwin tune about someone to watch over you. Because sometimes the cruelest beginning writes the most beautiful ending. Love at last. When did life hand you the love you never saw coming? Drop your story below. Let's fill these comments with proof that second chances are real. Thank you for coming on this journey with us. We read every single one.